Hello, everybody. Welcome to the HR Brain Trust After Party. We have a lot of great discussions. We just finished up an hour-long peer-to-peer discussion, and we're in our after party, our panel discussion. And our panel discussion for today is how to influence progress on anti-racism and DEI work with the dismissive leadership. And so we've got this great panel of people here on camera that are going to share their experiences and their advice. And Zundra Bryant with Centene Corp is going to kick us off. So with that, Zundra, I pass it over to you to kick us off on how to influence progress on anti-racism and DEI work with a dismissive leadership team. It's all you.
Thanks, Paul and Amelia, for this opportunity. And the topic is very appropriate for the times that we're in. And I want to start first by saying that I'm enjoying a wonderful environment at Centene who's committed to diversity, and we've had multiple successful interactions as an organization. I've seen us grow from embracing DE&I and making sure that we provide an opportunity for our employees to talk about it freely. With that being said, to the topic about influencing a dismissive leadership, my short answer is I'm not sure you can. If I was a leader in that type of organization, that dismissiveness would start make me question if the values of that organization are in alignment with me as an individual, because the emotional toll it takes on someone to try to influence a leadership mindset is high. And I would have to first assess, am I willing to take on that burden as an individual and pay the cost in order to try to influence a leadership that's already said that they do not want to engage in this dialogue. And then if you should choose to take it, I would say send out an SOS and enlist external help so that you can have others in your corner to help with driving messaging to that leadership team.
Excellent points. Thank you, Zundra, for kicking us off there. Who wants to jump in after that? Does anyone want to build on that?
I can.
Okay, Julie. And then
I just piggyback off of what Zundra said in terms of I've done a lot of consulting for mostly micro or small size businesses, as well as work internally as an HR director. And I think one of the aspects that, first of all, I think if you have the resources to be able to connect with outside experts and feedback and perspectives in that area, it always adds a value add, especially to leadership, around giving that type of outside influence and perspective that us internally cannot always do. I also think that one of the strategies that has been effective for myself, especially in working with organizations that are already diverse in a number of ways, is really understanding exactly how to be able to ask questions and get where the perspective of leadership is coming from. Because a lot of times what I found is sitting down and listening and understanding where they're coming from around their dismissiveness helps you to be able to have a larger conversation around it and helps you to be able to then provide information around either where the vision is coming from different individuals in the organization about wanting education and development and growth in different areas, or wanting inclusivity in different areas. Because a lot of times what I've found is that leadership can have a very narrow focus or understanding as to what they feel like they're already doing or what they feel like that is not a problem or an issue. And really helping to open up the conversation can help them to be able to have a light bulb turn on in areas that they might not have been aware of prior.
I'm curious, I have a question. So do you, in your guys' experience, do you feel like there is something HR can do? And maybe it's not dismissive leadership, but maybe it's just leadership that hasn't necessarily opened their eyes to how their priorities should be shifting and how they should be focusing on this. Are there resources or tactics that you can employ to, in a way that doesn't make leadership get like defensive maybe, to present certain things to them, to try and get them on the same page as you? Have there been things you've implemented or seen implemented in other organizations that can help somebody who's trying to get leadership on the same page as them?
Yeah, I can jump in just real quick. I think Julie hit it on the head too, and expanding on what I was alluding to. There are a lot of external resources that you can use to come in and do an assessment, right? Because I mean, the first step is really understanding what is the perspective of the organization, and using a survey or a tool that can, in a non-threatening way and anonymously, right, provide an opportunity to really gauge what people's perspectives are. That way you're using data versus the individual to illuminate where the organization is in regards to their journey with DE&I. And then from there, you start saying, this is the data. The data is telling us this. Let's strategize around how we move the needle on this data versus it being a personal, individual thing. And then the only other thing that I would say, one of the challenges with DE&I is making it personal, because when you mask it with DE&I, it almost becomes this nebulous thing that's out there, versus that you're actually talking about how your organization impacts a human being, how your organization impacts a person. So anything you can do to personalize it and illuminate stories on how the experience has impacted somebody in the organization personally, it starts to break down some of the barriers that people have and being concerned about talking about it, because now they're seeing the impact live and in color.
So do you suggest getting even certain people in the organization to maybe share their perspectives from a personal level, and that can move the needle for opening eyes of the executive team?
Yeah, you might not, depending on the maturity, you might not start with the person in the organization, because that could be threatening if it's already, not yet at that point. But they're transferable experiences, right? So if you get somebody external saying, this is how D&I has impacted me, they'll be able to translate that into their experience, because it might be hard in an organization that hasn't embraced it as a strategy or a topic to get people to voluntarily tell their personal stories. But, you might have a brave soul that'd be willing to chart the course on that.
Awesome. It looks like Leanne, you wanted to jump in.
Yeah, so I work for an organization who core values and their mission is directly tied to anti-racism. That is who we are. And so similar to Zundra, that's how you pronounce your name, yes. We don't have that issue of dismissive leadership. It is a requirement of our leadership to be devoted to anti-racism work. So you can't walk in the door without having that open mind and that desire to be part of a community like ours. And so what I wanted to say, of course, agreeing with everything Julie and Zundra said, they have to understand the why, right? Like, if we're just saying we want people to believe that we support anti-racism, there has to be a why, excuse me, and it has to be genuine. Like, how is that why tied to the work that you do, whether you're a tech company, you're a nonprofit, or you are running whatever type of manufacturing company, right? There has to be a why. And the why has to be tied to the mission, to opportunity for people of all races and color. And so after there's a why and you've figured out how is that why tied to our mission that we already have in place, like how can that be correlated? You have to recognize who are the people within your work and your community that are marginalized. And Julie and Zundra also said data is important. You have to assess your demographic data. What does your organization look like? Are you majority white? Are you majority people of color? Are you majority Black employees or Latino employees, Latinx employees? That is going to affect how you move, right? If you're majority white, why are we majority white? How are we attracting employees of color? And if we're not attracting them, why? Where are we searching? How are we recruiting? What are our recruiting efforts? it's also important, like Julie Zandra said, external support is super important, because if you don't have the capacity or the knowledge or the just the training to run anti-racism workshops and training for your organization, it's going to be really difficult to get their support. And so in our organization, when we first started at anti-racism, where we partnered with an organization, I'm blanking out on their name now. I will remember and I will share it with you guys. They have a different name now, which is why I'm confused. But we hired them regularly to host all staff trainings twice a year, specifically around anti-racism work. What is institutionalized racism, interpersonal, internal, define all that stuff for people. So it's not just saying we want to be anti-racist, it's defining it for people, where it falls in the work that we do and how we're going to call it out and establish those goals for it not to continue happening. So it's not just like, oh, we want to be anti-racist. Your goals have to, you have to have actionable goals, and it has to be part of your mission. Otherwise, it's going to be superficial, and you know, doing a training once a year on DEI doesn't solve anti-racism. It has to be all the way down into even the HR policies that you develop for your staff. Are the policies you have in place equitable for your families of color that live in your community? Down to like the type of parental leave that you offer. So it's all the way, it starts from the top, but the super, super small things are really important too, that sometimes we don't even consider.
Can I jump in as well? So great dialogue. I appreciate all the comments, and Leanne, you sharing your experience. I want to kind of get back, Amelia, to the root of the question, right? It's about influencing. If not, you know, I forgot what the word was, but, you know, influencing basically a leadership team that hasn't embraced DE&I as a focus point, right? That they, you know, haven't, you know, leaned into it as a sense of urgency. And I just want to, you know, I would offer up that, you know, I think through the pandemic, employees have started to find more of their voice and their choice, right? And that the best way to influence anyone that may not see the value in you or the work that needs to be done for you to feel like you have the same access to upward mobility, to feed and take care of your family as anybody else, is through your feet. And I think that putting the responsibility on the people who are most impacted to scrape, and continue to act and plead and beg for acceptance is a part of the problem. And I would just encourage people to really think about, if a company values and experience doesn't communicate to you what you feel it should, to exercise that right that you have to find organizations that align with you as a value. I think you can take the wage issue as another example, as a corollary. For the longest time, people have been saying the earning wage, the earning wage, the earning wage. Well, now, because we have people leaving the workforce, all of a sudden, magically, the earning wage is getting increased, right? And it's because employees finally found their power and started forcing corporations to respond to the need, because they realized without you, they can't get what they need to get done. I think the same in DE&I, right? If they can't retain you, they'll start feeling it and be compelled in another way.
And that's 100% true. I mean, I think that that's part of like where I certainly see my role is bringing all of those numbers to the table, right? And looking at the reality and like being, and, you know, we're talking about that education aspect, or, you know, the real understanding of the environment and what's happening here, and that it's not going away, and that this idea of really being able to be really clear in all aspects. And like you said, I think that's true for us as leaders, and it's also for ourselves personally, but it's also true for how we represent the teams that we're working with, and be able to communicate that to the leadership that we're helping to be able to grow and develop. I mean, that's the cool part about our job, is that we're in the middle of both of those, right? Where we get the ability to be able to communicate and represent the organization and the individuals in it. And that's our responsibility, is to be able to be really real about that, not only with the teams that we're working with, but exactly like you said about ourselves, because we can only go so far too, to where we become part of the problem if we don't fully step up to that. And I think that's something that we need to be really real with as a profession in our role, is that we have a responsibility to that for sure.
Julie, I love what you're saying. I love what everyone is saying. This conversation is so great in terms of taking individual responsibility. I have a quick story. I was able to go to Hawaii and interview a friend. She's been a nurse for 35 years. She worked at a hospital where the value was the child first and always. And that's why I love, so often these panel discussions come back to company values and everybody living the company values, because it equalizes power across the entire company. That's the beauty of them. And so she shared with me a story about how there was this child and it needed multiple surgeries. These surgeries were really big deals. And the doctor wanted to do both surgeries back to back, which was going to put the child's life at risk. But it was going to make it more efficient for the doctor. And so she, as a nurse, put her foot down and she said, these need to be separate. This child can't go through these two different surgeries. It's going to be too much for the child. And the doctor gave pushback. And finally, she said, look, the child first and always. If we put this child first and always, what should we do? And they ended up changing it. And that is the value. That's the power of values. So I really appreciate that perspective. Does anyone want to wrap us up? One more comment. We just have about 1 or 2 minutes.
I just want to say, if there's anyone here that's listening in that is interested in learning more about EHTP's anti-racism work, you're welcome to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I can definitely connect you with our team that works, that specifically focuses on that work internally and externally. We do consulting externally as well. So if anyone is interested, you can reach out to me.
Yeah, Paul, thank you for the opportunity again. I would just say an investment in DEI is an investment in your greatest asset, your people, and it's worth it. It's worth it.
Well, thank you everyone for being here today. I learned so much from each of you. I'm really happy that we were able to connect and go through this. And now we can share your thoughts and ideas and feedback with the rest of the community. So thank you.